What's up, folks? Coach Patrick here, Endurance Nation, talking to you again. Another weekly broadcast. Getting a little silly here on the YouTube channel for everybody who's paying attention. Thanks for tuning in for the video side of events. This week's conversation is a bit of a continuation from a prior one that I've had about a late season start. This week, I want to talk to you about something similar, but just a little different, which is dealing with early setbacks. So having a late start could be from a variety of reasons, but an early setback, well, that's something that's a little more specific. There's been an incident, something that's gone wrong, an opportunity for us to address a challenge, and I want to give you a clear path forward based on what those are. Again, most of the time, athletes look at these situations and then rule out opportunities based on the challenge that they faced. I've hurt my foot, that takes this off the table. You know what, like pool's shut down. Now I got to cancel these events because of these challenges. Well, I appreciate that level of rigor in terms of decision making. What most athletes don't account for is that their ability to return to fitness coming off of a baseline level of general fitness is actually pretty high. It's actually really possible to do it. And while even though now today getting back to working out, you may not feel great, a normal person might take 6 weeks to feel good again. You're going to feel pretty good in about 10 to 14 days. Although now it feels terrible, but every day you get twice as good, better. So by the time we think about it, all of a sudden you're like back in like I said, 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 days. And by the time you get there, you're like, I can't believe I canceled that event. So I got 4 more weeks to be ready. I'm actually fine. But 2 weeks ago, it's saying like a really bad idea. So I just did it. Let's get out of that knee-jerk reaction type space and instead look at what are ways that we can move forward constructively that keep you on track and allow you to keep developing as an athlete. Okay. All right. So the idea here is that what we're trying to do is get yourself ready for that next element, right? So we're trying to say, what's that next big marker in your season? What's that next big race? Like, how do we get ourselves back? And that's going to be our target. And the caveat here, the little asterisk that I have to put into this whole conversation is that any work that you do post setback, post injury, post illness, post challenge, whatever it may be, is that obviously you're talking with your healthcare professional and you're making smart and informed decisions about what's best for your body. I don't want you to be pushing through an injury or a stress fracture or something that ultimately will have deeper long-term issues or potentially could cause more long-term setbacks for you than if we don't need to have them, right? And that just requires a little bit of restraint, not free, not easily acquired, but once developed allows you to become a better athlete. So I definitely advise you to check into that. Head over to Amazon, add some restraint into your cart. Check it out because you're going to need it when you're coming back from one of these setbacks, right? Okay. So the first version is return from injury. So you've had some sort of a setback in terms of an injury element, which has thrown off your season. And now we have to get back into training. So the idea here is that because of this injury, there's some positives, right? So you're actually rested. Like before, we didn't think you were rested. Now we're like, oh, you're actually rested. You're in a good space. That's not so bad. Like, being out of shape and then trying to get back on track again is actually challenging. In this case, you're rested. So we know that all of a sudden you can get back better because your body is prepared to do the work. The challenge becomes that you're still healing and we need to build trust. So just because you're rested doesn't mean you can go out and run a half marathon on these legs that just suffered through, an issue with like plantar fasciitis. It would be the worst possible thing for you just to force through it. So instead, we have to take a look at that injury, judge its severity, and then decide what's the best path forward. And there's a bunch of different ways that we can go about doing it. But in general, what we're trying to do is continue that trajectory of healing while staying active. There's a certain baseline level of activity that stimulates recovery. And we want to get ourselves into that zone so we can continue to be on the right path and not encounter further setbacks, but also not to also just sort of get stuck in that neutral state where we're not really making any progress, which is another bummer, right? Okay, so how do we do this? The first option for us here is a phased training load. This is perfect for multi-sport athletes. What it means essentially is that you're moving from this state of your setback to a state of being 100% functional and healthy again. We use the example of running. It's the easiest version of it. On day 1, coming out of this recovery cycle, you can't go run. But by day 10, we want you to be running. How do we get you from 1 to 10, no running to running? What does it look like? We use a phased training load. And what we do is basically move from being active to being relevant to being specific. Active, relevant, specific, ARS. So at first, if you want to get back to running, we don't run or pretend to run or do anything in the same running heart rate. The first step let's get active. Let's get you walking at lunch, walking in the morning, walking at night, spend time on your feet, see how that works, give your body a chance to, sort of navigate the spaces around what it means to reactivate that part of you that was injured and shut down. And then how do we move from that to being more relevant? So from that walking, we say, hey, let's actually try some walk run here. The running part is relevant. The walking part is complementary. Let's get that going so we're good. And then finally, from the specific side, we'll actually start running. We can work through those progressions, even just 2 weeks at a time, 2, 2, and 2, to get ourselves back across that 6-week progression. All right. Another version of something that we can do in that same space is like returning from illness. So in this case, you're rested, but you've got this cardiovascular first you're starting over, right? So your muscles are strong because you haven't used them, but like cardiovascularly, blood volume is now low. Systemically, you're taking in less oxygen per breath. As a result, doing this type of work is challenging simply because your breath itself is restricted. So how do we get into a space where we are cardiovascularly healthy? Well, similar to the last example, it starts with that gradual recovery in and staying active. So don't push it. Like get out, be active. Understand that in those early sessions, you'll feel some pushback and some stress, but listen to your body. Like you push when you can and don't push when you don't feel right. You'll soon learn the differences between different days, different sessions, your different abilities, and you'll be able to put things together in a way that keeps you healthy and successful over time. Okay. Another option here, phased training time. So instead of phased training load, which is more and more stress, we phase training our time. So we're basically moving from like 20-minute sessions to 30-minute sessions to 40-minute sessions to an hour-long session. We basically start phasing in some time here, adding more training to the schedule as part of the process of helping you to complete that reentry and still keeping you on track sustainably. It's challenging to want to see epic changes right away, but for the most part, excellent fitness is simply built on consistency, and finding a place to be able to deliver that time and time again will be critical. All right. The next element here, returning from travel. So in this case, you're healthy, but you've lost some fitness. So we've got to rebuild the cardiovascular, but while you maybe put on a pound or 2 or 4 or 5, I'm a big guy, you have still stayed active. So it's not like you've suddenly become inactive. You've been active, but because of your travel or indoor vacation time, all of a sudden you're in a tough spot. What are you going to end up doing? What does it look like? So in this case, we want to be really smart about this return because there are a lot of elements about travel that just add friction to the day-to-day life of being an athlete, like seeing lots of people, lots of like potential disruptions for your sleep cycles or for your nutrition. And that's especially even intra-city, not just externally to different cities altogether or back home to your country. What we see here is that the travel can itself become costly if it's not managed properly, which is why when we go to the Olympics and you see athletes there, you can see the entourage that most teams have of people who are support staff helping them stay healthy. All right. And then here we go. Another option for us, our last option here on modifying our plan for the early season setback is dealing with what it means to rebuild your aerobic base. Like in this case, what we're trying to do here is say losing fitness is tough, regaining fitness is possible, but regaining fitness through higher intensity intervals right away is a surefire path to burnout and a lack of overall total performance. In general, athletes will build their fitness and training stress across the course of a season and then taper and rest to be their best on the big day. If you're not paying attention to the drops that are happening here, it'd be easy for you to miss out on the rebuilding piece. That's really important. In this case, what you're trying to do is just use aerobic volume as a chance to add to the schedule. If you wanted to roll your own, you could do a specific course, or you could jump into Zwift and follow one of the workout bots that we have here. I prefer Coco for my easier, longer weekend rides. All of those are options for you as you think about what are ways that you can, still be smart, understand what's happening, be responsive enough to do something about it. All right. Anyway, so thanks, folks, for tuning in. This has been Coach Patrick. I'm excited to see the progress that you make across the course of the season. The goal here, even when you're facing these early challenges, is to make sure that we stay consistent and focused. Don't let the bigger workouts or those higher weighted sessions intimidate you. Everyone's trying to navigate the space, and it's important to give yourself time to do it as well. All right. Thanks again for tuning in, everyone. I'll see you next week.